Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Salam alaikum. I am Sam Simpson. I'm the man who has designed, delivered, and will run the Olympic control room for the Metropolitan Police in a few months' time. To say that preparation has been a marathon would be fair. If I've got it wrong, I'll be for the high jump. I'll be forced to pass the baton on to someone else to run it in the future. End of the sporting allergies. Okay. Special Operations Room. I'll set the background for you to begin with, then you can put into perspective how the Olympics fits in over and above it. Special Operations Room in London is the dedicated control room that deals with all the major incidents that happen in the capital city. It is not business as usual. It's business as unusual. So all the pre-planned major events that come to the capital, whether they are state visits, kings, queens and presidents, or large street carnivals, New Year's Eve celebrations, or covert and confidential operations with the Counter-Terrorist Command and Serious Crime Directorate would come to me to manage the Communications Command and Control, and also all the spontaneous unplanned events that happen in the capital city, such as the 7th of July terrorist attacks or transport disasters. So those big, unusual events come to me as business as unusual to manage the Communications Command and Control. Different processes, slightly different technologies to meet those business processes. The approach we take for any event, whether it is pre-planned or spontaneous, the bedrock are these guiding principles that I've developed over the last 7 years. So whether it is pre-planned, we will always look to bring to the Special Operations Room the control for the different elements of officers involved. So if we've got transport police officers, whether we've got diplomatic protection police officers, airport police officers, they won't be controlled from their own control room. For major events, they will come to the Special Operations Room to be in one location. Very key in the management of the communications to be in one location for major events. The control room staff will be the most experienced control room staff that we have in the organisation. If you use your most experienced staff, it will reduce your training costs and add to the effectiveness of how they manage and support the officers out on the street. It is important, it's equally important for those officers and staff within the control room to understand what the senior commanders are trying to achieve in terms of their strategy and the tactics they're employing. So it's not only important for the officers doing the job out on the street, it's as important as the staff in the control room to know what they're trying to do as well. That way they can support the officers better. And it's about working together as well for major events. So we will bring into the Special Operations Room our partners. And in the United Kingdom, we call them the blue light partners. So the fire service will come to my control room. The ambulance service will come to my control room. But it's not just the blue lights. It's anyone that's got something positive to contribute to the command and control of that incident event. So we will have the military that come. We will have organisers of events come into the control room. So we work together in one location. We try to make the major incident control room as cutting edge as possible. As much as your budget will allow, invest in your major incident control room to keep it up to date in terms of technology, systems and communications. You've got to look at your succession plans as well. How long is this event or incident that you're managing going to go on for? Have you got the communications control room staff to manage that 12, 24, 72 hour, or indeed several days or weeks period of time? And equally as important, one that mustn't be forgotten, is what is your contingency plan if you lose your major incident control room? If that goes down for whatever reason, power failure, flood, attack, how are you going to manage your business in that situation? So that's the sort of the bedrock that we apply for any event, and it's equally applicable to the London Olympics. So the Olympics in mind, the concept of operations, no great surprise for a lot of you in the audience. The first strand of that concept of operation is the gold, silver, bronze principle of command. So even though it is the largest event in the history of the Metropolitan Police, we will still only have one gold commander, one senior officer setting the strategy on how we're dealing with that event. We will still only have one silver commander setting the tactical plan that supports that strategy, and the bronze commanders on the field implementing those tactics. So that's the first strand of the concept of operations. The second strand is a slight variation on the guiding principles where we won't be in one location. So we're working as, if you like, a virtual one. The second strand is to have forward command, but central control. And when approaching the design and development of the communications control room, it's really important to understand the concept of operation and the business model, because without that understanding, you will make best guesses with best intentions, but end up with poor results. You've got to understand what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to achieve it. So with that in mind, we have determined that the Special Operations Room will be the point of central control, where the gold commander and the silver commander are situated. But each of the bronzes will have a forward command point, where they'll be making their command decisions. So decisions in the field will be communicated via the central control room, thereby keeping the gold and silver commander in the information loop. So having understood that, we will then look at the technologies that are going to support the business processes. And the three key technologies within the SOR is the command and control application, which is called METOPS, different to a CAD because it's a different business process. It's looking after resources, not necessarily information. CCTV, within the next few weeks, I will be in charge of a CCTV matrix of something in excess of 17,000 cameras across the piece. It's the largest CCTV matrix in the world. But the key technology for today for us is, of course, airwave, TETRA airwave system that we're employing. So undoubtedly, it is the scale of the event that is the challenge for us. And when you look at the scale, you've got to look at the complexities of the operational response, because we've got different types of officers that I have to support. I have officers trained to different levels in managing crowd safety and crowd disorder, who will have different needs. I'll have officers managing traffic. I will have officers carrying firearms, because we are generally an unarmed force in the United Kingdom, but we do have specific firearms officers. I have got overt uniformed officers. I've got plainclothes covert officers, as well as partner agencies to support. It is a massive scale. Our biggest annual event is a street carnival in a small part of London called Notting Hill, which is the largest street carnival outside of Rio de Janeiro. And that looks at 1.5 million people that we have to manage the safety for, and we use about 4,000 to 5,000 police officers to manage that. And that's over a 2-day period. The London Olympics is on that scale or bigger for 64 days. So that's the scale, that's the issue of the scale for me. So the first challenge I've had to look at is the fact that with a mixture of overt and covert officers, they're on 2 different bits of hardware. My overt officers use Motorola. My covert officers use Sapura. Now the covert officers also use talk groups with end-to-end encryption. So the covert officers could not easily talk to the overt officers when they needed to. So having identified that issue early on, we have been able to refleet map the Sapura sets to include some overt channels now. So there is a degree of interoperability between my overt...
Ladies and gentlemen, the delicate lunch is now over.
Can you stop the clock? I want my chocolates.
I'll give you a benefit.
So we've got some interoperability now between the overt and covert officers, but the covert officers have to bear in mind when they do switch to those overt talk groups, they've lost that end-to-end encryption. So as long as they're aware of that, we can deal with it. But the other challenge for me, being the senior officer in charge of the control room, with that end-to-end encryption, I cannot control the talk groups they're using. So a challenge I'll throw out to the providers is, give me a solution to that problem whereby, like I can with the overt channels, using an X, and for us we use the Frequentis X in the SOR to control that channel. If you can provide me with a solution to manage the covert channels, then I can make a proper use and control those talk groups. Because in times of crisis, it's absolutely vital that you control the channel. You don't let the operators out on the ground overwhelm the talk group. When we opened the Special Operations Room in 2006, the floor plan looked something like that. We had 33 desk positions that we call pods that could manage our business. It was based on the current biggest event, which was Notting Hill, and built in a little bit of projected growth, but it nowhere near anticipated the demand of the Olympics. So the second challenge for me was I had a control room that could manage an event or events with 33 bronzes. But for the Olympics, on the 5 busiest days, I've got 88 bronzes. That's because, in addition to the ground bronzes that are deployed with officers, we have to look after what we call the functional bronzes. They're not deployed with officers on the ground, but they fit into the command chain, and they do have resources that we need to manage. So 88 into 33 didn't go very well, so I had to rip out everything I had been provided and redesign it to meet the needs of the Olympics. And it was better, it's a better design to meet the business processes for major event management. The previous design was very good to manage business as usual, but we're not business as usual, we're business as unusual. So now you can see a slightly different layout with specific designs that manage the needs of our traffic police, our intelligence gatherers, our crime investigators, our security and firearms people, as well as partners and media, social media included, as well as the venues that we're policing. And we do have a link into, unusually for us, the business as usual world. Because we don't have a defined geographic area, we are, for the Olympics, pan-London, and in fact national, we do have to have a link into our business as usual to make sure nothing falls through the gaps. Profile of the officers deployed, we see we're peaking at somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 officers at some point. So we're virtually doubling our demand for the Notting Hill Carnival. So there is my third challenge. At 9,000 officers, I'm not only going to manage the mixture between overt and covert, I've got to now manage the fact that I'm bringing in officers from around the country. It's not just London Police that we have to do the command and control for, as well as other airwave users. There are around about 30 specific Olympic venues within the capital city. We've got the main Olympic Park, of course, consisting of the stadium, the common domain, the Olympic Village, the sporting venues, and a large shopping centre called Westfield, nowhere near on the scale of Dubai Mall, but very close. We are virtual. And to support the increase in the demand of all those officers from London and around the country, within roughly this defined area, we've implemented a specific Olympic airwave infrastructure. Within that arena, we have built base stations that are 10 BRs, several of those. We've got many 8, 7, and 6 BR stations for the Olympic business. And all those sites have sufficient overlay with each other to give me some resilience. If I lose a site, then the other sites will be able to pick up the capacity usage. We've also boosted the business as usual sites at key locations as well to 4 and in some cases 6 BRs. We've also rented from the government extra spectrum. So we're calling that TETRA. So all the Olympic valid talk routes will be gone higher bandwidth in TETRA, leaving the business as usual on the TETRA, the old TETRA frequency bandwidth. In that way, that should enable our talk groups to be less affected by capacity issues. Over and above that, we have also placed on the Olympic base station sites an overlay and valid site profiles, which means only the Olympic talk groups will affiliate to those sites. The business as usual talk groups won't. Also, with the overlay, the ISI numbers of identified radios will again affiliate to those sites. So if officers bring their own radios into that arena, they won't affiliate to those masts. They'll fight for space on the business as usual. So, and officers coming from around the country will be issued with what we call event radios. So the event radio with the right ISI number will affiliate for them onto the network. So with all those contingencies in place, we have built in sufficient resilience and capacity to manage our business. But having modelled it and come up with our worst case scenario, we've also added a 20% surge capacity on top, because the unusual still might happen. I'll be using somewhere in the region of 70 to 80 talk groups across the piece, managing the business. And we will be going on occasions outside of that force area as well for some of the events, so I have to bear that in mind. But also in addition to the sporting events and the security arrangement around it, we will have to look after somewhere in the region of 200 plus VIPs with police escort. We've had a stringent test plan in place for several years, mainly around the known trialling sporting events where we can test this piece of work. What we hadn't planned, of course, were the London riots last year. That was not designed by us, but we made use of that situation and got a lot of learning about how officers from around the country impact on the network. And that learning was incorporated into the design. So the fourth challenge out of many, it's the last one I'll highlight today because there have been many challenges, but the last challenge I had to consider was business continuity. And that leads back to those original guiding principles and touches on that last point of contingency. So what's the business continuity look like? For us, you have to consider people, premises, technology. I will only, of course, concentrate on the technology and within that airwave. For us, we've got the business as usual. Sorry, can you pause that? We've got the business as usual contingency, which is the cluster hot standby. If we lose our main network, then it seamlessly moves over to the cluster hot standby. The users will not notice it. We've got the mobile base stations. We've got the emergency response vehicles. So we've got all that still that we will use during the Olympics. And should we get to the worst case scenario, I've got a guy embedded into the SOI, a guy called Chris Glover, who works for Capita, has done a lot of work for me around building this picture. Chris will be there linked into the Airwave London headquarters, just outside London, who will be monitoring the capacity and coverage within London and highlighting to us any issues as they begin to develop so we can start to make mitigation around those. Worst case scenario, we will fall back to direct mode of operation. We have several of those to use. And indeed, we may fall back to, if we have to mobile telephony. And for key decision makers, we've got some satellite telephony as well. So just to finish off very quickly, because I do want my chocolates, if you hit the play button for me now. Bit of home movie that shows you the control room as it was about 6 to 7 months ago, after we had ripped out everything that we put in there at great expense originally with the C3I communications program. The other thing to remember is when you're adding extra technology, you will be adding extra people. All that adds up to heat, So look at how good your air conditioning is. And if you need to improve that as well, that's a bit of a low-tech sort of hint for you. So with the floors up, that's how it looked about 6 months ago, with a lot of work that took place in installing those new Frequentis X with that additional functionality around CCTV management, talk group configuration, patching of talk groups, etc., etc. And very quickly after this one, I'll show you how it looks now, and I will stop talking in 3 seconds and let you just look at the images so I get my chocolates. Or maybe not. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there it is. Please.
So the capacity now has gone from 33 positions to 64 positions with improved interoperability with all the key partners that will be working with the Metropolitan Police during the Olympic period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation. You certainly deserve your chocolate.
Thank you very much.